These videos are about regular people talking about the things that divide us, immigration, race, Trump, etc., so they might offend you. But I hope they're useful, like some videos I made about home repairs that helped thousands of people. You see, I hate doing my own home repairs. I don't want to listen to a professional home repair guy who makes it look easy. TV pundits give me the same vibe. I don't want to listen to these people. When you see them on TV, they're at work. It's their job to talk about this stuff. They're not really interested in learning from each other and fixing the problem. They sure don't ask the questions I would ask. So me and my brother, who is himself progressive, we drove to 22 cities and interviewed dozens of people who support progressive causes. And I learned this. It's our feelings that divide us. Feelings driven by personality. Some of us want to be the innovators, the trusting, the idealists. Some of us want to be the managers, the cautious, the realists. And each of us builds a fortress around our feelings that you can't break through with facts and arguments. But maybe we shouldn't try. Apparently, evolution or God or whatever made us this way for a purpose. I think that purpose is that we need each other to get the full picture. I know it works that way with other things, but we have to talk to each other. If we don't talk to each other, we won't make progress. Next, we drove to Petaluma, where women's health nurse practitioner Joleen Bishop described the changes that occurred after the Affordable Care Act. She's also someone who experienced firsthand the power differential and intimidation in the workplace that the Me Too movement is exposing, and we talked about how this related to Donald Trump.
In the practice I'm in now, I work for what's called an FQHC, which is a federally qualified health center. It's a very good distinction. We are a nonprofit public health clinic. When I started, ACA had not been implemented. But when it started implementation, what changed was the enormous number of people who came back into the healthcare system. So a lot of folks, when they don't have money or the availability other than going to the ER, don't get continuous care. They just treat it episodically. So when ACA came in and people started realizing they had access to primary care, to ongoing care if they needed it, our influx of folks has been tremendous.
If you don't mind.
No.
With that influx of folks that are getting regular preventative treatment, we always hear of the benefits of that.
Yes.
Is that something you've seen the direct benefits from?
Yes, and on the federal level, we have a lot of benchmarks we have to make. And one of the ways that help our reimbursement is keeping people out of the ER and out of the hospital. And one of the ways you do that is through a process of certain routine things like diabetes, hypertension, pap smears. So that system's in place so people have access to that. And when they come in for these kinds of visits, then you can catch up with some of the other things. And you give them a place to go that isn't the emergency room. And also empowers them to learn more about taking care of themselves. The poor or people who are really struggling don't always have that. They have more intense needs. And so their body or their health often fails. So that's what I see as an enormous benefit, and it was almost the first year.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
When hospitals became required to take in people who were indigent and give them care.
Yeah.
Is that something that was a big effect on the healthcare?
Not as much as I don't feel it was. Now, I'm not a hospital administrator, and hospitals have a different set of problems and things they have to be concerned about. And certainly too many people who are uninsured is one of them. There are ways around having to accept people. Most communities have public health in some way. And so there are ways kind of around private hospitals can stay out of giving that particular level of care.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because I keep thinking, okay, I know if you're in the armed services, if you get an inoculation, they just line up 100 guys and they give you inoculations. There's some kind of economies there.
And I'm ex-military. Yes, okay. I know their health system.
And they have economies of scale.
Correct, and it's quite amazing. Okay. I got to tell you, if you want a universal health system, utilize the structure. There are lots of things wrong, but the structure in either the VA or the military, because that will show you how to do a universal system in a low cost, in a much more low cost way.
Okay, so are we doing any of that kind of economies of scale?
No, I think the VA, I mean, there are a lot of problems in the VA, but they certainly try to do that. Some large public health hospitals and certain clinics do that. You know, the push is really to keep people out of the emergency room. And when people were being denied care before ACA went into effect, there was a lot of discrimination through the insurance company. I feel the insurance companies and the drug companies have participated in this enormous problem we have. And until some of that really gets exposed and talked about and not lobbied and special interest involved, then you won't see that economy of scale. If you had, now it's harder with a universal health system, it would be easier because then the rules like we deal with the federal rules a lot, they're all the same. So you kind of know what's expected. Whereas private industries, private hospitals, things like that have their own rules trying to contain cost. But sometimes for drug companies or even insurance companies, containment of cost is not the priority. And so we've never really dealt with the cost of drugs in this country. There are rules against people trying to get it cheaper in other countries, things like that. We've not really addressed that, and that's my feeling is they have a very strong lobby and an investment, and they're protecting that. Yeah.
Okay. Did I understand correctly that the Affordable Care Act, because it's imposed some kind of like federal standards, it is doing a type of economies of scale because of that?
It is. It pushes, it's got enough, there are enough benchmarks that you have to hit quality-wise. We have quality in all of this, that it pushes you to become more efficient and to meet these benchmarks. And that allows you to have a greater piece of reimbursement. Again, you're always kind of jockeying for dollars here.
So do you think that healthcare is a human right that everyone should have?
Yes, in some way.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
We deserve that.
What do you think of the idea that they get a safety net, but not identical care? You know, in terms of, I mean, not like they don't get the right drugs, but they don't get the private room. They don't get, you know, when they go to
now that
inoculations.
exists already through Medicaid. It's called partnership here, but Medicaid, there are very much restrictions on that. They're only going to cover certain things. They're formulary. The drugs that are covered are certain drugs, which are all, they're not like bad, but they push you to do the most cost effective thing. Sometimes patients have to wait a little longer to get into a specialist, but it'll eventually happen. Okay. So there's a difference. It's already being done in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're happy with the results of the Affordable Care Act, where do you see this
it
going?
needs some things.
Okay, well, yeah. Well,
it
explain.
does. Well, I think financially it needs to be reworked in some way, and because it is not sustainable where it is right now, and that was known when it was passed. So that needs to be fixed in order for it to kind of settle down again and it needs to be sort of the same, because it's different here in California as it is in Alabama or Kentucky or the middle states who didn't embrace it like California did.
What types of things would you kind of delineate as the problems?
Well, I think when you have a for-profit entity, which is insurance companies, and you're trying to provide health for folks who really, in some cases, don't have the money to let's say, as someone else, there's a problem. There's going to be a lack of care there.
Right, but wouldn't you argue, I mean, it's the same with car insurance or fire insurance or those types of things?
Healthcare to me is a little different than property. Human beings, because I'm in that business, mean a lot more as far as than your house. Right. And yes, we have car insurance and all of that, but I'm telling you about healthcare. You mentioned people being indigent. Most of my friends who are self-employed are on ACA here. And that is to give them the benefit of lower cost, and they pay. It isn't free, but they get subsidied. Now, maybe the subsidies should be less. I mean, there are ways, I think, to adjust the cost to everyone.
Okay, but it sounds like what you're saying is that the in your opinion, just there's a natural contradiction when you're trying to save costs and also run a health insurance company. So
Correct.
it's just is it just bad players in health insurance? Is there no way? You know, I mean, if you had angels running the health insurance companies, is there no way to make a profit as a health insurance company?
No, I think there is a way. Kaiser Permanente, who's very big in California, I'm sure they're not, they're not like HCA, which is a healthcare association. I worked for them in Houston. They were for profit. I don't have a problem with healthcare being profitable. I have a problem when others get denied at the expense of the profit.
Okay.
That's where I get a little uncomfortable.
Okay, and that's a reality that is just undeniable. You're saying that the health insurers are pushing to the point where people are dying, people are not getting the treatment they need.
Before ACA, for sure. Okay. There was a lot of denying care and people not getting certain things, especially very expensive treatments because their insurance had run out or they couldn't afford it. And I understand, people do pass away from various things, but if we have the ability to even this out a little bit more, I feel we could do that.
So the funny thing is, I don't remember these kind of horror stories, health insurance horror stories when I was a kid. Do you?
No, but we didn't have health insurance. I grew up, my parents were fee for service. So we went to the doctor, they paid for it that day. We weren't in the healthcare system like people are now. We didn't have all the requirements of immunizations like they do now. Our children have to have a checkup every year. I mean, when I was raising my son, I was stunned at how often I had to take him to the doctor. Other than illness, because so no, we didn't. We probably didn't go to the doctor very often as children. We're probably pretty healthy. Well,
I'm confused. I don't know where to say this even started. I mean, I know there's a problem that what was it during the Nixon administration? They started bundling health insurance with.
Oh, that was the first set of problems. Was the Nixon, and then they went to with the HMOs and price control. That was a nightmare. It just, it's. My belief is it should be Medicare for all and whatever, and the cost shared in some way. Don't know the best for that because I don't think it's always fair that the young people get nailed on so much and the older people don't, but I also am an older person and I can see why that happens. So I don't know where the middle exactly is, but I do believe that people should have access. And they deserve to be cared. You, with insurance, deserve as much care from me as the person, my homeless woman who comes in once a year. You see what I'm saying?
I see that. But
in
I don't.
My view, that's how I see it.
But
not everyone feels that way.
But should she get a private room? Should she?
No, of course not.
Good.
No.
Good. So there is some benefit.
That's part of the cost sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And one of the things that's the conservative complaint about the medical industry right now is you'll hear it over and over again. And actually, you'll hear it from Howard Dean. Howard Dean, wasn't caught on a microphone, but, he said, hey, the reason ACA is not going to handle tort reform for liability insurance is because the lawyers just would, we dare not do that. We will not do that because the lawyers will just eat us alive. Politically. It was a pure political decision.
Right.
The other thing that seems just, crazy to begin with is the fact that there is no competition that goes across state lines. Is there a defense for this crazy system we have now where you can't buy health insurance, on the open market from anybody you want across state lines?
No, I don't understand why. I'm not sure the rules that are in play for that because I've never thought that was I never understood it as an issue. From the Democratic side, it's like, well, I don't know why we're fighting about that part. I'd be more concerned about access and some sort of way to make it affordable.
I mean, it's a huge deal among conservatives because it's like we have such faith in laissez-faire economics. It's just like the government's got 4 duties, and if you do those duties, then just let the rest of it take it. And then when we start to see that the government's saying, well, now you got to do, X.
Right.
We're not going to let you do that. And it's like, gosh, guys, did you never read Adam Smith? Do you not know how the unseen hand of the marketplace works? Do you really think, Now I'm on a soapbox, and that's not the point of the video. So,
well, I think your point is about regulations that are interference. And I do think that we are too regulation heavy. There are probably many that could be done away with. I'm not a big fan of easing up on environmentals because I have lived through the 60s and 70s where the pollution was so bad. But all these petty regs, there's a lot here in California as well. And it does get a little tiring. And I try to take it in as, well, it's for the common good, right? But I agree. I'm not so sure all that regulation is necessary.
Okay. Can you, since you deal with women's health issues, I really have a question that I'm afraid is going to be very, very offensive. But Trump is a real trigger for, after the election, I just felt so bad for friends that did not support Trump. And I can understand because of just how crude and how crass he was. And, in the Access Hollywood tape and all that kind of stuff, right? But when people started saying, hey, he's guilty of assault, I thought, okay, I'm sorry, that seems like fake outrage. Now, you in your career, you have seen assault. I mean, what Trump did is crass and crude and an idiotic move that no man should ever do. Okay? But I don't for a second believe that he didn't stop if they knocked his hand away. I don't know. That's just my guess. But what do you think about the outrage at this and people saying that this is assault?
It is. If you're a female and you are having to deal with powerful males pushing in some way against you, either physically or emotionally or threateningly, it is assault. I used to be in business, in real estate business, and I worked with a lot of individuals who had various levels of a similar way of approaching women. And I was young and attractive and got hit a lot. And I was in the military in the 70s when it wasn't cool for women to do that. So I really had to learn how to deal with it. But it is assault because it's a powerful male, and usually it's not a powerful female that this activity comes against. And I don't believe the leader of our country should be saying things about women that he has said all along. It's offensive, and he is unchecked, and it's not okay. And, it's not okay. It's not for him or anyone. And it is assault. Assault and rape are different. But when women have told many of these men no, or they don't know what to do, then, you're young and you don't have any resource. I'm a Me Too woman. I was young. I got put in a situation that I didn't know how to come out of, and I ended up being assaulted. And then I lost my job. So I had an experience that is similar, and you never know how people are going to deal with it. And some of these women were actually taken advantage of, or these men were exposing themselves, or whatever. These are powerful men, not powerful women. And it's a very disproportionate dynamic.
Okay.
So as far as assault, I know for some, that's one of those words that has a lot of, everyone has an idea of what that means. To me, the bottom line in all of this is that men need to talk to each other in a different way, and men and women need to talk to each other differently now. It's been exposed. There's this huge power difference, if you will. Women didn't have a voice. Males were allowed to continue in their behavior. And so we have to figure out how to make that different. I mean, we need to change that in the workplace, in the home, at the grocery store. I mean, we just need to figure out a different way to look at this. Okay. What makes males do that behavior? What is behind that? It isn't the behavior, but what's behind that? Yeah?
Okay. So up until this, talking to you about it, I always thought, okay, if you're this dude that makes these moves, which I would think most guys would never do in a million years, but if you're one of these dudes that makes these moves, then if the woman declines and you don't pursue it, you don't jump on top of her and force her, then obviously you're not a criminal, you're not a rapist, you're just a jerk. You're making this move, you think you're a player or whatever, and you have this move and maybe you think it's your own.
But then when it crosses over into the power piece, where women have been intimidated or harassed or lost their job, whatever, when it crosses into that,
absolutely.
You are in a different land.
Absolutely. Now, I'd be in a million
You're out
years,
of jerk land and into assault world.
Sure. And that's what, I guess that's why I look at when people were saying assault for Trump, and I was saying, hold on a second. He's an old guy with a bunch of money. He's talking about, hey, you buy him things and then you make your move and they go for it, right? I mean, crass, crude, something I'd never support, wouldn't want it around my 4 daughters.
Right.
But that's the way he rolls. And I don't, maybe I'm ignorant, but I don't think that's assault.
Well,
if he stops. I mean, if he continues. Now, it sounds like what you're saying is, there's a lot of people, a lot of women that wouldn't know what to do, and they would just kind of go along. Is that what you're saying?
When you're young, oftentimes you don't have the resources to make it different,
Okay,
or
so,
you're too afraid you'll lose a job.
So just the fact that they put them in that very difficult position, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's taking advantage of a situation.
Okay, so, and please forgive me if this is offensive. How is that different than all the goofy Doris Day, Rock Hudson, we'll put on the music, I'll do this, I'll give her a drink. How is that different? How is that different than baby, it's cold outside?
It's consensual.
Oh, well, sure, yeah. Well,
hold on. Okay. Usually when women feel the assault is when they're just doing their life and this other person comes in and does their behavior.
Great.
That's
so we're in
different.
agreement on that. So we're in agreement.
You're going out on a date.
Yeah.
Shoot, I want to, yes, of course, turn on the light, make it romantic. Love to. Yeah. But when I'm at work and you're rubbing your business up against me, that's not okay.
No, never. And I think it's unambiguous. I mean, the stuff we've heard in the headlines is completely unambiguous. What jackasses these are.
There's probably no question. And it's a pattern. If you look at this, it isn't just an individual. We're talking a pattern of behavior.
Oh, sure.
And these are the women who decided to speak. I can guarantee you there's a whole trove that aren't. Because speaking out is not always in your best interest, as you know.
Well, good. So let's be clear then, and I'm very glad to hear you say this. If you're not forcing a power play, if you're not, nobody's going to come after you for being an inelegant, Casanova who's an idiot. As long as you stop, as long as as it's consensual. So it's not just.
This is one of the things I think is going to get redefined in the workplace for sure. Let's just use the workplace.
I think in the workplace, never. I mean, nobody should do that. That's just crazy, Tom. If you're doing it with it,
Right.
Boss,
but most of these women were talking about this occurred in their work environment, especially the actresses. So, I think there's two different things here. There's two environments.
Maybe I've made a big deal about it, but I just...
No, I can see your concern because you don't understand it as assault.
Well, my concern was that, specifically with regard to Trump, I never heard of this in the context of they were subordinates of his. Is that actually the case? I thought they were all just, he was trying to put a trophy on his wall.
I don't know the exact. One woman was on a plane. I mean, there's quite some awful stuff. So I'm not sure of that kind of behavior. It gets kind of,
And I'm sorry, I shouldn't even bring this
my
up.
deal is more the pattern of behavior. And Bill Clinton is another one. Yeah. He now, again, that was 20 odd years ago, but he didn't answer for his actions, and he didn't answer for whatever, with regard to women and men, for the years prior. Bothers me a lot. So to me, it's the pattern of behavior and it's the lack of change of behavior. Mm-hmm. That's what, yes, the behavior's crass and all of that, but we need to train each other how to be different than that. They, males need to learn that, and I think it's a crisis in men right now, how to act, what to do, how to be. Who am I at work? That's a big deal. And women have just had it with some of the behavior, and we're pressing our males friends to please look at it, adjust, and then go on.
That's great.
That's what I say.
And I think we can all agree it's fantastic
Yeah.
that folks do not feel like they have to keep their tongue.
I hope not. I mean, I think if somebody upsets me at work now, I would say, you know what? I don't appreciate that, but let me tell you why. And so that's part of learning the conversation, as opposed to you're a bad person and I'm going to go to HR, instead of figuring out a way to say, hey, not appropriate behavior. What are you trying to say? That's a conversation, yeah?
Okay. Yes, that's much better. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're so welcome.
That was Joleen Bishop in Petaluma, California. I'd like to thank her for sharing her opinions on Obamacare and the workplace problems exposed by the Me Too movement. I hope you consider supporting this series by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks.